Wallach students. So on this episode of environmental science, we will cover section 1.4, which is chapter 1, section 4. So section 4 is all about the biosphere. And just to review the journal guides and the expectations for high schoolers versus the middle school students. So for high school students, for section 4, we'll cover the objectives, the outline, the vocabulary definitions, the section review questions, and the figure. And while we are covering these, the middle school students will pay attention to the objectives, the vocabulary definitions, and the section review questions. So outline 1.4. Again, the title is the biosphere, and so that is indicated by Roman numeral 1. And the classifications under the Roman numeral 1 are objectives for A, B is vocabulary, and C is section review. And again, this section is only for high school students. So again, if you're wondering, Mrs. Roseberry, what do I do with this outline? You write this down. This is how we are doing the outline. Moving on into objectives, objective 1.4. Now recall that our objectives guide what you are to be learning and what is expected of you. So the first is describe the regions of the biosphere. And I see that I need to fix that. Describe the regions of the biosphere. And 2, explain how organisms interact with the biosphere. Taking a look at our vocabulary definition, in this section there is only one vocabulary, and that is the biosphere. So biosphere is that all the parts is the area where all the parts of the earth that support and contain life. So essentially, it's the entire earth. Moving on into section review, and let's just take a quick glance at the journal guide. So we did the outline, the objectives, the vocabulary definitions, and now we are getting into the section review. And again, you're asking me, Mrs. Roseberry, what do I do with these review questions? 2 things. And you should know, because I've stated them over and over again, that you write the question down and then you write the answer. It's important for the questions to be written down, because if I happen to pop a quiz and I say you may use your journals, and you will want to know your answers, the questions to your answers. So very important for you to write down the question and the answer. So let's take a look at section review 1.4. What parts of Earth make up the biosphere? And again, we mentioned that the biosphere, let's take a quick look at the definition again. The definition of biosphere is all the parts of the earth that support and contain life. Okay? So what parts of earth make up the biosphere? So within our reading, we learned that the lithosphere, which is the land, the hydrosphere, which is the water, and the atmosphere, which is the air that we breathe, all support life, and that these are the elements that make up the biosphere. So again, the biosphere, let's take a look at that definition again. All the parts of the earth that support and contain life. So let's take a look at lithosphere. Is there life on the land? Yes, we live on the land. Animals live on the land. Insects live on the land. Dogs live on the land. We have lots of dogs here in Nunwalek. Then what about the hydrosphere? The hydrosphere is where water is. What lives in water? The first thing I hear students saying is fish. We catch fish here all the time. And maybe seals, because you guys go seal hunting. And maybe you might say halibut, because you catch halibut right out of your backyard in your waters. And maybe you might say whales. We've seen whales in the ocean, in the Kachemak Bay. We've seen tadpoles. We've seen turtles. So definitely the hydrosphere, the part of Earth that is covered with water or consists of water, certainly supports life and has life. And then the atmosphere. What lives in the atmosphere? Now, again, we are looking at the biosphere, all the parts of the Earth that support and contain life. So now we're looking at a supportive element of life. Okay, so the atmosphere definitely supports our life. Without breathing in the air, the atmosphere around us, we would not be alive, because that is an element of the Earth that supports life. Okay, so all three of these, the lithosphere, hydrosphere, and the atmosphere. All of these are the parts of Earth that make up the biosphere. All right, number 2, list 2 ways in which you interact with each of the 3 parts of the biosphere every day. So again, here's the answer to the 3 parts of the biosphere: lithosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere. Now, there is no right or wrong answer to this, because it's going to be your interpretation of how you interact with the land, with the water, and with the air. And so this is what I came up with, and it's real simple, and yours can be, as simple or as complex as what you would like to make it, but this is an example here that I have. We walk on the ground every day. We drink water, and we breathe the air. Now, I gave you examples of how we interact with each of the 3 parts of the biosphere every day. So what are yours? Is it that you walk to the lakes, you go and fish at the lakes, and you breathe fresh air along the way? And so you can describe some beautiful examples of how you interact with the world around you. Okay? So analyze. Let's take a look at section review question number 3, analyze. And when it says analyze, it asks you to think about what they're asking you. In what ways does each part of the biosphere contribute to the production of the food you eat? Oh, now we're moving into another area about how each part of the biosphere contributes to how we survive, how we eat. And again, I provided an example, and it's one that's related to subsistence, because we do a lot of subsistence hunting where I'm from. And one of the common subsistence foods that I have discovered that we share between Nunwalek and where I'm from in Barrow are seal hunting. Okay, so hold on one second. So my example is. All right, so the seal, who lives in water, operates and thrives in the water. They breathe the air like we do. They have to come up to the surface of the water to breathe air. So it lives in water, and we, as humans, we harvest the seal. We catch the seal by whatever means that we can, and we bring it onto the land, and we eat the seal. And so that is an example of how, I suppose, a subsistence example of how does each part of the biosphere contribute to the production of the food you eat. And you can work backwards. It's like, okay, what do you eat? Let's say smoked salmon. Ooh, really good subsistence food, the best in the world, right? So we have smoked salmon. So we caught the salmon. It lives in the water, and it also breathes. And so here we are as people on the land eating smoked salmon, the salmon that we caught from the water, and where the salmon thrives, and it also takes in oxygen through its gills. Even though it's part of the atmosphere, oxygen is part of the atmosphere, oxygen is also an element that is found in water. Water is hydrogen and two oxygens combined, and so the gills, through the gills, the salmon breathe. Okay, all right, so that is the section review, 1.4. Now let's go back to the journal guide to see, Mrs. Roseberry, what do we do with the figure? Because here in section 4, we have a figure. Over here on the middle school side, there is no figure expectation, so you are done. And so moving on to the figure, you could have selected any particular figure within section 4 and draw and also write the captions. Okay, so I chose figure 1.1 or 1.11. And so I picked the closest example that I could, picked a picture off of the internet and placed it in here. And so, so let's take a look at figure 1.11. Organisms interact with each part of the biosphere. The tree absorbs groundwater, and the leaves of the tree absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and they release the oxygen, the O2, and water vapor. The rocks and soil anchor the tree and contain important minerals and nutrients. So why is that important? It's all about what we've been learning about the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, and the lithosphere, all of this combining to make the biosphere, right? So here's another new term in this particular figure, but we're not going to worry about that right now. But you can definitely see what the pedosphere would be. Okay, so, and again, so we take a look at this tree. So it's a living organism. It takes in carbon dioxide and it releases oxygen. It releases oxygen. I think that's always phenomenal because that's what we breathe, oxygen. What we exhale as humans is carbon dioxide, and that's what the trees breathe in, carbon dioxide. Okay, so that's an interaction within, between the atmosphere and the biosphere. Now we take a look at the biosphere again, where living organisms are. And we take a look at the lithosphere, because we know the lithosphere here is the land. So, so the organisms will will, or this living tree will absorb the water that is in the land, and it also absorbs nutrients and minerals. And so that is its life cycle. So organisms interact with each part of the biosphere. The tree again absorbs groundwater, and the leaves of the tree absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and they release or breathe out oxygen and water vapor. The rocks and the soil anchor the tree and contain important minerals and nutrients that we enjoy when we eat parts of the tree, right? So, so that is it. I hope you enjoyed this review. Make sure that you have answered all of the section review questions, written down the objectives, the outline, everything as expected, and turn those into me through Canvas. And so the final piece, we will go ahead and do the chapter review. And thank you so much for working hard and reading and studying and learning about environmental science. And we shall meet again.